New Hope came to an end, sadly, but all things come to an end, I guess.
Yeah.
And you moved back into the Faith Mission, and you moved down to Devon when I went to uni. You left me, you ditched me, as I said earlier. But I think we've chatted before, and you said that was a real time for you guys to have a rest
Hmm.
because there's times where you need a rest. Um, but during that time, you got ill a couple of times. You had a heart problem. Um, you also fell off a tree and broke your leg. Not broke your leg, and got compartment syndrome. You know, in your leg. Sorry for just telling people that, but you went through illness after all that stuff with New Hope. What was your sort of faith like after all of that? After doing all this stuff for so many years, to then be put down to Devon and to not be as busy, to not be involved in that ministry. What was your faith like and your walk with God like in that stage when you got ill and all those sort of things happened to you?
Well, me and your mum thought that we were ready for a quiet life.
Yeah.
We thought that after New Hope, um, and the busyness of that, because it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we thought, we're ready for that. We're older now. We need a rest. But we went down there, and it was just more or less one thing after another with health. Um, I was in a hospital. Um, they were telling me it was this and that and the next thing, and yeah, that was an interesting period of time. Um, but I remember watching your mum, and your mum was worried sick, um, because I would suddenly just go grey. How she put it, you just go grey and you just lose all function. You would just sort of collapse, and I didn't see it. I just thought, I was just tired or something. And I remember going into hospital and sitting in the hospital beds, and all sorts of weird things happening. But when we went up to where we are now, up to um,
Harvey.
Harby, I was cutting a tree down, and a tree fell on top of me. I didn't fall out of it. The tree fell on top of me, um, and hurt my leg. Really smashed into my leg. So the tree fell on top of my leg. Um, and I went to hospital and misdiagnosed. And then 3 or 4 days later, I was taken into hospital with compartment syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and knowing then that I could lose my leg, I could lose my life. Um, and it was pretty hairy, scary sort of things. But there was two things that happened. One with my heart. I was in A&E, and then they put me into a resus, and it was like casualty. I was rushed in because the bells and everything were going off on me, all my stuff, and I was lying there, and I was in and out of consciousness, and the doctor came over. Really don't know what's happening, Mrs. Park. You might lose your husband. Just be prepared. And me and your mum looked at each other with a wee bit of a cry. And then I said to her, I said, now you know where the life insurance is, don't you? And I said,
Typical
I
Scottish.
don't want you giving any money to those kids. You go and buy a house and you look after yourself. And she was going nuts with me. But we prayed in front of everybody, in front of the nurses and doctors. And we prayed, and I prayed that I'd have a good death. that people around would see Christ in me.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. It was a bit scary, but to be quite honest, if I'd gone, I'd gone. I know that sounds like a bit blasé and oh really, but I was. And then when I did my leg, I was lying in hospital, and I prayed. I said, Lord, if there's anything that comes out of this, that I would want people to see Christ. Now, I am not a hyper spiritual man. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm
Really not.
No, really not. I'm probably very logical and very,
Well, that comes sort of from the atheism, doesn't it?
yeah,
From back in the day,
yeah,
sort of trying to think logically
yeah,
and disregard everything else. To
yeah,
think logically, this is the way.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I
which
don't,
is probably the way to think.
yeah,
Logical thinking is very good.
yeah. I don't try and get things up with my emotions or anything
Yeah.
like that. I can be emotional, but I can show emotion, but I'm not emotional.
Yeah.
So I was lying in my bed praying. I just, Lord, just help me to be the best that I can and to be a witness in the hospital. And it was amazing the amount of people that came into my room. There was this janitor came in, and he came in and he said to me, he said, I just want to pray for you. There was a doctor who came in, and she said, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen to you. You might lose your leg. And she went out the door, but let's touch wood. And I said, don't need to touch wood. Christ is the answer. And she looked at me and she must have thought I was off my head. She said, if God wants me to have my leg, I'll have my leg. If it doesn't, then it'll be gone. And God will help me through this. And all little things like that. But I remember praying, Alistair Patterson, who was my boss, said to me, came and saw me. And he saw me and he must have thought, this guy, he's not going to, his leg's not going to, because it was twice the size.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had said to him, I says, I'm resigning. I says, I'm useless now. I'm resigning, Alistair. And Alistair said, don't be silly. Let's see how things work, and don't be worrying about stuff. I said, I'm not quite sure. I think I'll be resign. Anyway, he wouldn't accept that, and I said, right. I said, Lord, if I'm going to keep this leg, you're going to have to do something through the night, and my something show me in the morning. And I got up in the morning and I looked down at my leg. It wasn't moving. And I said, Lord, I said, so am I going to lose my leg? I looked at my toe moved.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew from then on. And I had peace. And that was it. I knew that God, everything that I've ever gone through, I knew that God was in control.
Yeah.
And I believe that. It doesn't always come out how it should or how I think it should. But I believe that. And I'm not, as I said, I'm not a everything will be fine kind of guy, because I do worry about things.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that God is in control. And I deeply hold that. And whatever happens, happens. Doesn't mean to say I haven't got my fears. Doesn't mean to say I haven't got my ups and downs. Doesn't mean to say I'm perfect. Doesn't mean to say everything does go perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one of these health and wealth guys. I realise that things...
Because things don't go perfect.
No.
As you've experienced and as you know. And
Absolutely.
as life is.
Absolutely.
What would you say to those who would say, if, as you would say back in the day, what would you say now to someone who said, if there was a God, all these things wouldn't be happening to me?
I would say that's proof that there is a God. Because God shows us in His Word that there are things that we're going to go through. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean to say that you're going to have an easy ride. It means that you will have someone with you all the time through that ride. And you might not feel Him, but that's where you got to trust. And so all the things that happen in the world show us that there is a God, because God says in His Word these things are going to happen. And the plan and the purpose that He has in those things. I don't know why certain things happen in my life. I still don't know. There are some things that I do, there are some things I don't. But I do know this: God has a plan and a purpose in everything that has happened in my life and everybody else's. Whether good or bad, He has a purpose. And He will glorify His name through it, no matter what.